The Money Gym, Chapter 2, Beliefs, Behaviours and Attitudes. For the last 40 years or so, I've had a deep conviction that I was going to be a successful business person one day. I didn't even know what a successful business person actually did, but I knew that I wanted to be one. But over the last 5 or 10 years, a nagging feeling grew that perhaps I'd been made with a fatal flaw inside me that would stop the success from ever happening. What I didn't realise was that success doesn't just happen, you have to make it happen. How do you do that? By deciding what you want and finding out what you need to know in order to do it. Sounds obvious, doesn't it? But what if what you want to do is to make money? For whatever reason, you don't seem to be able to do that. Well, the first place to look is in your family. We've talked about expectations, and the next thing to examine is how your family related to money. Where did you inherit your beliefs about money? We tend to follow the beliefs, behaviours and attitudes of the folks around us. Consider your parents' and relatives' attitudes to money for a moment. What kind of people were your parents? Did your family pass on the assumption that if you worked hard, earned and saved for retirement, you'd be fine? How did they both relate to money? Was your mum different to your dad on this? Did they fight about money, or did they just not talk about it in front of you? Was one entrepreneurial while the other was cautious? Which one do you take after? What about uncles, aunts, grandparents? Who had the biggest influence on you where money is concerned? When I thought about this, the one key phrase I remember being bandied about in my house was, "We can't afford it." As soon as I learned how to change that into, "How could I afford it?" things started to change for me dramatically. The other thing that I remember was, you can have anything you want in life as long as you want it badly enough and work hard enough. Oh, guess what effect that had on me? Write down the one main statement that was true for you about how your parents related to the subject of money around you. Now write down how that has translated into how you feel about and deal with money yourself. Abundance versus scarcity. A turning point for me came when I realised that there was enough money sloshing around the world for every single person to have in excess of £1 million, or dollars. It's out there somewhere, and who is to say that I am not as equally deserving of some of it as the next person? Do you ever complain that you don't earn enough? Why is that? Is it that your company pays everyone the same as you? No. So why is it that your company pays someone else more than you? But they won't pay me any more, you might say. Well, what is the difference between you and the higher paid person? Is there so much difference between you and that other person? That's an interesting thought, isn't it? And it leads on to the thought, well, what would it take for me to become the kind of person who is paid more for what I do? What made me leave school and apply to low to medium paid jobs? Why were my expectations so much lower than those of a similar child? Same height, same hair colour, same IQ. What made them certain that they deserved to be a lawyer, a singer or a doctor, while I was thinking about working in an office or becoming a hairdresser? I can tell you one thing, if at the age of 16 I'd known what dentists can earn, especially nowadays, and be self-employed, one of my dreams, then I would have seriously considered dentistry. Actually, thinking about it, if you're a self-employed hairdresser you earn a fortune as well. Why was I still, at 38 years old as my husband was made redundant, applying for secretarial jobs for $12,000 to $14,000 per annum? Bill Gates is so rich that if he was a country, he'd be the 7th richest country in the world. That may even have changed recently to the 4th richest. Did he gain his wealth by taking it away from someone else? Well, some people would try and argue so, but no, in fact, he made other people richer as well. There is not a finite supply of money. You can create wealth out of nothing. In 2001, this is just one example, I created a company and sold my half of it for over £12,000. £12,000 created just out of an idea. This was the first time this had ever happened to me. Up until the recent crisis, the fact was that banks actually wanted to lend. They actually had lending targets. In fact, they still do. They're just a lot tighter, the criteria. When the market eventually recovers, all we will have to do is present our case, our idea, our business, in such a way as to make it easy for them to lend to us. But remember, we actually only want to borrow to buy assets that will pay for themselves and increase in value without us having to dig into our pockets. One of my earliest wealth creation mentors says that wealth creation needs the scales of abundance to be in balance. Do you think those scales are out of whack for most people? Consider the example of the little old lady who lived so frugally that she had lunch in the pub on old age pensioner days to save electricity, but then left millions to the cat's home. Consider the example of the loud flash bloke in the restaurant who dresses well, earns a fortune, drinks Krug champagne and waves a gold or platinum Amex card around, but who hasn't got an asset to his name. What is the difference between them? Which is the wealthier? Who has the best beliefs, behaviours and attitudes? What sets some people's expectations at certain levels? Think about where you've set yours and why. There are some great books on this subject. Try reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill or Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. I also recommend a great website by Maggie Whitehouse. Maggie works quite deeply on prosperity thinking, and I'm really impressed with her approach to the subject. She has some great tools and games on her site that will take you further with this module. You can find her at www.pureprosperity.com. Her passion revolves around increasing our abundance by releasing our blockages around money and encouraging us to set our intent. Her site offers loads of great free information, including a cheque for £1 million. How handy is that, which you can print off? Needless to say, that's what I've done, and it now resides above my desk along with my client list, target for next year, treasure map and enlightened millionaire certificate from the 1 Million Millionaire book. I've also got a signed $1 million note from one of my heroes, Robert G. Allen. In the book, you'll find a wealth building exercise around your beliefs. There are examples of negative beliefs and examples of positive beliefs. What you need to do is go down the list and tick the ones that resonate for you. Now, if you can't tick a positive belief, that means there is an equal negative belief behind it. So don't ignore the positive beliefs page as well. Further on in the book, there is some exercises you can do. It says, if you can't tick any of the positive beliefs, then what's stopping you? If a positive belief is not true for you yet, there is a negative belief hiding behind it. Identify this negative or limiting belief and then work through the following exercise in the same way you would for a negative belief. So what we get you to do is write down your beliefs and then to write down other examples of your own beliefs that may have not been included on the list. Then we get you to write down the particularly strong beliefs, but then we get you to write down the beliefs you would like to hold around money. And then we show you an exercise how to collapse each limiting or negative belief and in its place establish a positive one. In short, we help you create your own prophecy around your wealth, which you then can bring into reality. Don't overlook this exercise. It might sound a little woo-woo for some, but you'll get some really positive insights into the way you relate to money from it. It's not what you earn that counts. In fact, I'll go further. It's not what you earn, it's not what you spend, it's what you keep and what you do with what you keep that counts. When you play Robert Kiyosaki's brilliant board game Cash Flow 101, you swiftly find out that it's easier to win if you start out as the janitor than if you draw the airline pilot or doctor card. This is because the pilot and the doctor have a lifestyle to support and every child costs more. You generally have higher levels of debt and have more doodads to service. Doodads are things that take money out of your pocket, by the way. So how do you break out of the trap you're in? How do you liberate some money to start investing in assets that will generate a largely passive income? You need to add another job title to that which you have already. You need to become a freedom fighter for your own money. Part of the freedom fighter's job description is to find ways to liberate small amounts of cash from Sainsbury's, from Threshers, from B&Q and from Costa Coffee. But how can you know how much you can liberate if you don't know what you're putting into captivity in the first place? You need to get fighting, freedom fighters. Here's an action step for you. Do you feel at all motivated now to get out your envelope of receipts and the file of neatly filed bank and credit card statements yet? How about a guerrilla attack on just totting up some rough monthly outgoings? Pay it forward first. Have you seen the great film Pay It Forward with Kevin Spacey? A little boy is set a project by his teacher to come up with an idea that will change the world. He struggles and struggles, and he goes through life, but then he comes up with an idea that if just 3 people committed random acts of kindness for 3 other people, and then inspecting a payback asked those 3 people to do the same for 3 more people, it would change the world. What I learnt from the experience, brackets college chemistry, is that it doesn't always matter if you understand the details. As long as you get the formula right, you can count on the results. That's a quote from Mary Hunt, Debt-Proof Living. In her great book, Mary Hunt talks about the formula for debt-proof living as being 10-10-80, and this is how it works. For every pound that flows into your life, you should give away 10%, save or invest 10%, and live on 80%. Yeah, right, I can hear you say. I can't afford to give anything away. And I would have to say that even a little while ago, I would have been right there with you. But she makes a compelling argument for giving or tithing before you even start to earn, and some of the things she says in the book struck home with me and lodged there. Two of the reasons that I found particularly compelling were, it has to do with balance. There are those scales again. When you give to others first and then care enough about yourself, your family and your future to say that some of what you earn is yours to keep, the 10% for saving or investing, then what she calls your insatiable desires are hushed up. Giving teaches your brain that you have more than enough. You see things differently and your vision of life changes. I believe that giving helps you believe in the financial abundance all around. When you give, you're telling yourself that you're beyond scarcity and you're being grateful in advance, and being grateful is a very powerful emotion. If you've never been a giver, facing the 10% hurdle can be daunting. If this is the case, start with 1 or 2%, but get into the habit, do it 30 times and then increase it slowly. Remember, you don't have to know how it works. Just if you follow the formula, you can count on the results, as Mary says. It doesn't have to be money. It can be time and skills, but it seems to work better with giving away actual money. Every time I give away anything like wealth coaching or internet marketing coaching in some form, I attract more new clients at the full rate. It works every time. Okay, here's an action step. Who would you pay it forward to? Pick a charity or good cause right now and resolve to find out how to easily and painlessly make donations. Perhaps you can pay by automated debit online every time you receive a salary or other kind of check. You've got to make it simple. Don't get bogged down in all that covenant stuff for a while. Just give. You can get more sophisticated as you get the habit. Even if you just work out how much a week you will give and then drop it into a big issue seller's hat if homeless people are your thing. Side note. The Big Issue, www.bigissue.co.uk, has become the Money Gym's official charity because they help the homeless to help themselves. It's a two-way street, with the vendors having to prove that they're trying to help themselves first in terms of overcoming their various addictions or problems, and they have to agree to behave a certain way in public when selling the newspaper retail that they have bought wholesale. In March 2009, we handed over a cheque for £4,500, which we raised from our Property Extravaganza Day. We felt that was only right, property investors helping the homeless. And it was one of the proudest moments of my life so far. The room was full of experienced and aspiring property investors, all of whom were there because they'd read this book or experienced one of our wealth creation programs. Something I could never have envisaged when I first wrote the e-program that turned into this book back in 2003. I also really enjoy donating to Kiva, because what you donate they lend to micro businesses around the world on your behalf, and you choose who you want to lend to and which projects, and then you get to re-lend again when the micro loans are paid back. You can join the Money Gym Kiva team at www.kiva.org/team/themoneygym. Pay yourself first. When I read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was struck by the new-to-me concept that you should ensure you pay yourself first, before the taxman, the supermarket, the garage around the corner and that little Italian restaurant you like to visit. It turned on its head the concept that you deserve a treat occasionally and that you should cheer yourself up with a frothy cappuccino because it doesn't cost very much and makes you feel better about your overdraft somehow. Have you ever wondered why sometimes poor people have such great cars outside the houses they don't own? Drive round any council estate in the UK and you will see that it's true. Where do you think the term ghetto fabulous came from? Who do you think those people are paying first? I had always thought that you should pay the most you can to everyone you owe, regardless of whether you can afford it or not. I often ended up unable to put food on the table because of that. Somehow that seemed to be more in integrity to me. But who did that serve? Certainly not me in the short or the long term. Was it a self-esteem issue, I wonder, this notion that everyone was more deserving of my money than me? What is this paying yourself first business all about exactly? Well, we've just talked about paying it forward first, and I should be clear that paying yourself first comes after paying it forward first. And then when you talk about paying yourself first, it should also be clear that when you pay yourself first, you buy assets with the proceeds, not doodads. Doodads being things that take money out of your pocket rather than putting money into your pocket, remember. When you buy doodads, you're just paying the supplier of that doodad before you, your family and your future. Who do you pay first at the moment? Who are you allowing to hold your money prisoner? This is another scary concept for folks struggling to make ends meet. The idea is to pay yourself the first 10% of every pound or dollar you earn. If your finances are super tight every month, then start with your net take home and work up to your gross income before tax. Otherwise, you're still paying the taxman before you. And what will you do with the 10% of net or gross income you're now paying yourself first with? For the time being, just stick it somewhere safe where you can get at it while earning a little interest. We'll cover the practicalities of that in Chapter 3, Cash Flow. Your comfort zone. I saw a big article in the paper a little while ago about how many intelligent, articulate people are getting quite phobic about money. Symptoms include racing heart, feeling of depression, avoidance of all money pages, programmes and the business section of the news. They don't open bank accounts and they totally disconnect from thinking that what they spend today will turn up on a credit card or overdraft statement tomorrow. The cause of this new phobia is quite simply overwhelm. They can't cope with the information overload about life insurance, term assurance, income replacement policies, TESAs, ISAs, flexible mortgages, endowment policies and the many other mortgages, so they simply switch off, especially if they have been missold a product or they've invested hard-earned cash into savings vehicles that have lost value. People simply do not know what to do or where to turn for the best. They don't trust advisors, sorry but it's true, and so they just give up. They decide to live now because it seems nothing they can do can make it any better. This book is all about taking it back to the basics, keeping it simple. I could bombard you with technical stuff, but I know that you're probably in overwhelm already. And if you could cope, then you probably wouldn't have bought this book in the first place. And it's not your fault that you're in overwhelm, because it's not in anyone's interest to keep it simple. The financial services industry, in their eagerness to offer a product for everyone, are only trying to help, while making a buck admittedly, but we know that's not a crime, don't we? But they're also trying to make profits. So what I want to do is to get you to look at and think about all the emotional and historical reasons you are where you are with your money. I ask you to consider how it would feel to get on top of it and really feel in control for once. And then very slowly, I'll ask you to take one step at a time out of that lockdown box where you and your finances might have been living for a while now. Just start keeping the receipts. Just start getting the paperwork sorted out, which in itself will probably make you feel much better. I hope that by Module 3, with my support, you're feeling able to tackle some of the more uncomfortable stuff, and that you'll be able to start to move forward out of the red and into the rich. Action step. If you haven't done any of the exercises yet, if you haven't started keeping your receipts, if you haven't started sorting out your paperwork into the files, then now is the time to do it. We're moving from the soft, fluffy, woolly part of the book into the practical, action-orientated part of the book, and you won't be ready unless you start to take some action now. Trust me, do the preparation and we'll start to move forward together. Fake it till you make it. What makes you look and feel wealthy? My mentor Jill Fielding used to start her wealth creation seminars by asking people why they believed that she was qualified to teach them about becoming wealthy. The answers were always really interesting. Because I've heard you're a millionaire. Because you live in a big house. Because you spend time looking after yourself. You're always at the gym, pool, having a masseur, etc. Because you don't have to work. Because you're immaculately groomed. Because you used to be an accountant. Because you say so. All of these answers are subjective, and none prove that Jill was qualified to talk about wealth. In fact, she used to say that being an accountant had been a distinct disadvantage when it came to making money. But everyone had paid to be there in her seminars or on a weekend, so something about Jill had made them trust her skills and her knowledge. They believed that she could teach it, whatever it was, to them. So what makes you think that I could teach you about wealth creation? Is it the fact that I bought a hotel no money down? Is it the fact that I say so on a website? Is it the fact that you've been reading my newsletter for months and months and you're ready to take action now? It can't be the pictures. What made you trust me enough to spend some money on this book, and just as importantly, spend your time to find out what I've got to say? As I looked at this question, I realised that it was the fingernails with Jill for me. Anyone who could spend that much time or money, if you're paying a manicurist, doing their nails, had to be wealthy. And if Jill had made it herself, then she could show me how. Then I looked a bit closer at what wealth meant for me personally. At the time, my vision of wealth involved me living in a big old house, beautifully decorated in warm, light colours, surrounded by dark wood antiques, listening to classical music. It's clean and very, very tidy. My hair is nice, my nails are immaculate, my clothes are ironed. I work because I love it, but I don't have to go anywhere particularly unless I travel business class, at least, and stay in nice hotels. I can pick the kids up from school, but I don't have to do any of the housework. There is always enough of everything. I never run out of food, toiletries, makeup. I have bubbles in my bath every time. I don't rush anywhere. Now, when I finished writing that statement, it was interesting how many elements in there had absolutely nothing to do with actually being wealthy. And interestingly, I was almost punishing myself for not being more successful by being too frugal with stuff like bubble bath that only cost pennies. So here's how I faked it till I made it. I listen to classical music in the car. I buy 2 of everything, so I always have a reserve of 1 in the cupboard. I've rearranged my day so that I don't have appointments after 3 p.m. and make sure that I have time to get everywhere without rushing. I insist on things being tidy around me, and previously I loved moving into the hotel so that my wonderful cleaner looked after my surroundings as well as those of the guests. I now actually have a cleaner at home, and she does a better job than I ever could. I say no to speaking engagements unless I can travel comfortably and easily in the middle of the day. I like to stay overnight so that I don't end up driving miserable and alone for hours on end late at night. And you know what? It worked. I felt wealthier immediately. So how could you fake it till you make it? Imagine yourself 10 years on and you've made it. What specifically are you enjoying about being wealthy? What little treats do you enjoy that you didn't before? How could you now, at little extra cost, make yourself feel wealthy and worth it? Beware the financial boogeyman. So many self-employed people spend so much time and energy trying to find ways of not paying tax, they forget to do the important thing, which is to make money. I often hear people saying things like, oh, you don't want to be self-employed or make more money because you end up having to deal with all that paperwork or you end up paying it all away in tax. What people forget is that you only have to pay tax if you make a profit, and you only have to pay tax on a percentage of your profit. And you have tax allowances on the money you make before they even calculate your tax. If you have a company, then it has its own tax allowance. It's counted as a physical entity separate from you. Even if you end up having to pay tax at the dreaded 40 to 50%, what does that actually mean? It means that you're keeping 50 to 60% of your profits, and profits mean total income less legitimate expenses. If you're employed, you might have to pay for your own mobile phone, magazines, and training seminars. These have to be paid for out of your after-tax income. If you have a business on the side of your day job, you can claim many of those things as allowable business expenses, so you get the benefit of them before you ever have to pay any tax on your profits. Do you find this stuff interesting? We will cover this in more detail in the Mind Your Own Business module, but suffice to say that making lots of money is good, having as many legitimate expenses as possible is good, one of which is your tax specialist and accountancy bill. Paying even 40% tax is good because you're keeping 60% of the extra money. Extra money is good. The independence that comes from earning your own money separately from your day job is very good. Similarly, so many self-employed people end up in trouble with the taxman because they won't spend a little bit of time and money to get good tax advice from a specialist accountant. They are scared of incurring lots of terrible charges. Let me tell you, the tax bills you may end up incurring would be a lot more terrible if you ignore this advice. But we're coming full circle here now. The taxman can be your friend if you keep good records and have a good tax advisor and/or accountant. But possibly the real boogeyman is the worst kind of accountant, one who is complacent and who does not do what they are supposed to do. One of my clients had an accountant who charged her over £300 to reply to one telephone query asking a question that basically required a yes or no answer. So she was understandably reluctant to call him again. At the end of the year, she received the usual bill and assumed as you would that this was for checking the books that had been prepared by her bookkeeper. But no, it was just for signing off on those books, not checking them or querying them at all, not even looking them over to see where she could make tax savings in the future. And now she has a much larger tax bill than anticipated, plus a routine tax audit, and she will now have to pay the expensive accountant even more money to oversee the audit. The words salt and wound come to mind. How would you know that some specialise in tax, some in retrospective or historical accounts, and some in being proactive? You wouldn't. You can go on recommendation, but there are as many accountants as there are solicitors or coaches for that matter. My client is now in talks with the more proactive accountant who will be paid on a monthly retainer basis to avoid nasty shocks in the future, both with the bill and the tax due. He is completely reviewing how her businesses are set up so that they are as tax efficient as possible. Who is the real financial boogeyman, the tax office or complacent accountants? Or business people who stick their head in the sand? Action step. Have a beauty parade. Make an appointment with at least 3 accountants for a complimentary introductory session. Tell them about your personal circumstances and your aspirations. Then let them tell you how they can help you. Let them tell you how their firm can support you in making money and saving tax. Ask them if they are investors in anything themselves. You'll soon get a feel for the good ones, and if you're not sure, make appointments with 3 more. You'll learn a lot in the process. How to mind feed. What is the greatest asset you can have? What will enable you to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and start again, even if you lose everything? Property tycoon Russ Whitney used to send off for every wealth creation scheme he saw advertised, until finally he bought a tiny book that gave him the knowledge that he needed to be able to make money from property. He has gone on to create a multi-million training company, teaching people how to make money from property. I was a desperate underachiever at school. School was far too boring for me. But luckily my mother instilled a love of reading into me at a very young age. And in addition to romantic historical novels and science fiction, I used to buy every how-to self-help book on the market without even knowing that they were called self-help books. How to make great decisions, how to love a difficult man, and how to become a woman of substance were 3 of the early ones. My friends used to tease me mercilessly, and I used to have to hide the books in a cupboard, but I couldn't quite bring myself to throw them away after I'd read them. I didn't know it, but I was searching for the education I didn't get at school. So why wouldn't I throw them away when read? Because I felt instinctively that somewhere in those books was the secret. Now, I'm not talking about the famous film of the same name, which came out after this book was written. The secret was the one magical thing that would make me successful, the key, the power. What I didn't realise as I bought and read the books, but often didn't do all the exercises, oh no, that would have been far too simple and obvious, was that it was not one thing that would make the difference. What was I missing? The fact that it's not one idea, not one secret, not even any one exercise, but it's a process of education, of resisting the negativity that we're surrounded with day by day. It's a layering upon layering of ideas and ways of thinking, of glimmers of possibility, of keeping one's motivation going, of not giving up. In the same way that fairy stories never quite fade from one's memory, making it exciting even as a cynical 40-year-old to go into some sun-speckled, dew-drenched wood in early morning, you never quite know if you may see a fairy toadstool ring and hear laughter as the dancers flee. By continually exposing yourself to educational how-to books and seminars, particularly around money and wealth creation, you're feeding your mind. Mike Littman, author of Conversations with Millionaires, says that one of the best reasons to set a goal to become a millionaire is for what you'll learn along the way. And if you learn something new, just one thing perhaps from each book, you're growing an asset so powerful, so creative, so full of potential for wealth creation that one day you will explode with an idea that will create more abundance than you can even imagine now. Action step. Go to your bookshelf and dig out any books on wealth creation you've ever bought and all the folders from the seminars you've attended. Dust them off and start reading them again. And if you haven't bought any yet, get started with Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This time, actually do the exercises suggested at the end of each chapter, if there are any. See what works for you. And by works, I don't mean makes loads of money spontaneously appear in your bank account. I mean, see what tweaks your thinking, gets your creativity flowing, keeps your motivation high. I actually use reading as a form of meditation. Even if you read a book twice, you pick up new stuff each time you read it, I find. Your greatest gift. Following on from talking about your greatest asset, your mind, I would like to move on to another great asset you have. It's you. Your soul, if you like, your spirit, the essence of you. While your mind will enable you to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and start again, even if you lose everything, it is your spirit, your soul, your you-ness that will make you want to do so. At school, we all pick up that we should fit in and not stand out from the crowd, to be normal. It's a very powerful cultural force. In Stone Age days, it was a protective mechanism, but nowadays, it's very limiting. And if you're serious about becoming financially abundant, being normal is positively dangerous. Many of my clients experience great resistance and negativity when they start to work with me, often from the people that love them the most, parents, spouses, siblings and best friends. Often it's people who are better off than you, but they don't know how they did it, that will caution you the loudest. You will need to be strong to overcome that wall of negativity that will rise up in front of you. I used to work in the music industry, and it is popularly assumed that you must be a shark in order to succeed. So everyone was busy being sharks and double-crossing each other every way you turned. But when I really looked about me, I saw that the very successful and admired people were the ones with integrity. The managers who were still looking after their successful acts 20 years on with no more than a handshake. When I attended Dave Buck's seminar at the Coachville Conference in Las Vegas 2002, he planted the seed that in order to become truly wildly successful, the more you can become, the more you will attract people to you who can and will want to help you on your road to riches. Building on that, with the following quote by Marianne Williamson, popularly attributed to Nelson Mandela, it set me free to be as great as I know I can be. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? The recommended reading for this chapter is Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. You Were Born Rich, Bob Proctor. Richest Man in Babylon, George S. Clason. Conversations with Millionaires, Mike Littman and Jason Oman.